me at Cello, Cello. You had me at Cello. You had me at Cello. Oh, you had me at Cello.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's 5 o'clock on a Friday, and you know what that means. Time for Cello Chat. I am thrilled to have with me this week George Teague. George, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me.
Terrific. Oh, I'm very much looking forward to this. So can you tell the audience your musical background?
Sure. So I am originally from Phoenix, and I lived in Arizona until I was 22, and then came to the Midwest. I went to Roosevelt in Chicago, then eventually ended up in Milwaukee, and that's how I got to where I am now. But I come from a completely non-musical family. So both my parents and all of my grandparents, they never really did anything musical. And it was sort of a mystery as to why I was so interested in it, because no one in my family pushed me to do this at all. But a lot of my friends were in the arts, and I wanted to feel included in the activities that they did. So it felt pretty natural that I would try to include myself in those things. But musically, compared to some of my peers, I started quite late. I didn't really get into any musical activities until about seventh grade, and that's when I picked up the violin. And this would have been a completely normal situation, but my school did not have an orchestra; it had a band. So I was playing violin in the band, and I was playing the flute part, and I was the only string player in the band. And, I really have no answer as to why I decided to do that, other than none of the band instruments spoke to me, and I really liked the violin, and I guess I wanted to be a little bit different. So I was in band on violin, and I was taking private lessons because my band teacher said, "Look, I really have no experience with string instruments. You're going to be kind of alone with this." And so I really recommended that you go get private lessons. So I did. And my teacher asked me to listen to my pieces that I was playing on YouTube, get an idea of what they sound like. And so I was on YouTube listening to my pieces, and in the sidebar, I saw a video of a cello, and I think it must have been the prelude to the first suite that I saw, and I clicked on it, and I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is what is for me. And by that point, I kind of realized that I wasn't really clicking with the violin, that the technique really didn't suit me. And then at that point, my voice had really dropped as well. So when I heard the cello, I was like, wow, this feels like my voice, really. And it felt really familiar and comfortable. And at that point, I was in eighth grade, and I was still in band. So I switched from playing the flute part on violin to playing the trombone part on but I really didn't start taking it seriously until high school, when my high school orchestra teacher saw that I had a lot of passion to really do well on the instrument, and he recommended a cello teacher that he took when he was a kid, and she was a tough teacher, but I really responded well to that, and I wanted to learn so badly. And as I went through high school, my focus became more and more narrow, and I realized that this was something I needed to do with my life.
And from there?
So from there, I decided to major in performance in college, and Arizona has 3 state schools, and I auditioned at all of them, and I formed a really great connection with the teacher at Northern Arizona University. Her name is Dr. Ann Ramos, and she was kind of new to that school, and she was just fantastic. I started kind of late, so I felt like I was playing a game of catch up with my peers almost, and trying to learn really fast. And a lot by doing that, I didn't develop the best technique. So she said, "Okay, we're going to start from the ground up," and that was kind of discouraging, actually, to sort of be a freshman in college and hear we have to start from the ground up. Here I am, a performance major. I'm like, wait, I want to be performing these high level pieces and you have me playing Twinkle. But it was exactly what I needed. And so I got through that. We got through that. She got me through it. And that's when the Suzuki method came into play for my teaching. And she told me that, I know your goal is to be performing. At that point, my goal was to win an orchestra job. And I really had no idea how hard that actually was, but that was my goal. And she said, whatever you end up doing, you are going to be doing teaching of some sort. It's going to be some part of your, like the pie that makes up your musical life. You're going to be teaching. And the thing that's going to set you up best for teaching is the Suzuki method. And I had no idea what that was. She said, if you're going to be studying the Suzuki method, you should do it with Tanya Carey. She is like the name and face of Suzuki cello in the US. And so I didn't start my Suzuki cello journey with her, but one of her students, because she wasn't available a particular summer that I needed to do it. So I did my first 2 books with Alice Ann O'Neill. And then after that, I started doing my training with Tanya Carey, and I loved it. And I thought, my gosh, like, what if I went and studied with her? Just like not just Suzuki, but like actually studied with her. And it was, I mean, to say incredible is an understatement. The things that she did for my understanding of music and technique. And then the benefit was that I was near her, so I could do all of my training while I was at Roosevelt in Chicago as well. So after that, I lived in Chicago for a few years after finishing my master's, and I was sort of cobbling together my life with different teaching jobs here and there. And I found this really fantastic opportunity at the Wisconsin Conservatory to do Suzuki cello. They had a really great Suzuki cello program. And at that point, my life was sort of split in between the 2 cities, Milwaukee and Chicago. So I was going back and forth a lot. And eventually it made sense for me to move full time to Milwaukee. And I've been here since then. That was about 2019 when I came on part-time, and then 2020 is when I came to Milwaukee full-time, and I've been here since then as part of the conservatory and part of the Suzuki program.
Tremendous. Yeah, I think the world of Tanya Carey. She's amazing, isn't she?
Yeah.
And just the degree to which there's a number of ways in which, like, of course, during the whole COVID thing, a lot of people's online chops and technology chops went way up. But Tanya had really figured out an extremely effective way of doing the remote teaching before it was kind of forced on everybody. Anyway, she just, when she puts her mind towards whether it's a specific way of teaching a particular technique or a broader approach or something, she just is amazing in what she accomplishes.
Yeah, and she really had a leg up, like you said, when it comes to the online stuff, because she had been teaching people virtually for years because so many people wanted to study with her, and she really helped to transition Suzuki training online as well when it needed. I did books 9 and 10 during the pandemic on over Zoom with her. Yeah. So it was different, but it was still the same content, just presented in a different way.
Yeah, and her books as well. Some people they teach extremely well in person or whether also online, but then articulating it in words maybe loses a little something, but her books are awesome too. Yeah. So, and then Suzuki wise, let's talk about the Suzuki setup and philosophy and situation. I think you have mentioned in some of your other online videos, resources that I hope people who watch this will also check out, that the mother tongue approach was maybe one of the, at least the earliest or one of the more significant things that spoke to you. But I also like that you cite in some of your biographical materials that every child can aspect. And it's kind of funny to me that I really believe every child can. And I mean, every 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old sings. And if kind of encouraged to sing, learn a new song, and maybe even to dance to it, they totally do it. And it's gleefully done. So in some respects, so the every child can is just taking that and running with it, allowing that to blossom rather than kind of to be stymied over time through self-consciousness or whatever other just things that come along. So, I mean, a little bit, I just am curious about how the every child can, or the mother tongue, or other aspects of Suzuki, if you want to elaborate on any of them. But just from my own perspective, I marvel sometimes at how the every child can idea is not as pervasive as, it's not universal kind of yet. Some people say, you really think every child? Yes, it totally can.
Yeah, that brings up an incredible point, is because it feels like it's an obvious statement, right? That you would be hard pressed maybe to find someone who will point at a child and say, no, this child can't. I mean, you want to be able to say, like, yes, this child can succeed. And I think that sort of goes along with my teaching philosophy of I teach to the student that is in front of me. And we're always striving for excellence in our teaching and our playing, but that looks different for everyone. And the statement every child can, I mean, there's sort of a semicolon at the end of it, like every child can do what. And I think the can do what is answered with their goals are, really, whatever the goals are that are supplied by the teacher, the parents, the student themselves. So it's a really open-ended statement that allows for success in every situation. And and it makes sense because we think about how children learn languages. Like, a child in Japan will learn Japanese from their parents, and they just do that. And we also think of children that grow up in multi-language households. They end up learning both of these languages, and the brain just picks up on the sounds that we're hearing, and children have this incredible ability to take in these sounds and then replicate them later. So the mother tongue method really goes along with playing the recordings. There's a lot of listening involved in the Suzuki method. So even before a student is picking up the instrument, they're listening to these pieces, these really high quality recordings, and learning this sort of idealized sound, almost like what sounds good, and then later on learning to replicate the sound. And it's fantastic because you see a student that has spent a really long time listening to recordings, and then they finally get to the piece in their playing, and the piece just sort of unwinds in their mind and their fingers because they've heard it for so long. They know how the piece goes. So it's a really incredible way to learn, and it's fun. Like when I was learning how to play cello, it was a lot of scales and etudes and exercises, and I like that because I really like structure and I really like discipline. So that was totally fine for me. But with the Suzuki method, the technique is in the pieces themselves. So you're playing pieces right away. And I think that speaks to a lot of people and a lot of kids too, who, one of the very first pieces in Suzuki is Twinkle, which is a song that kids hear and know from school. And so they get that on their instruments as well. So I think it goes with what kids are doing naturally, learning languages as they grow up, learning songs. So, the instrument and the technique aspect follow along really well with it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's great. And teaching the student in front of you it's more work for the teacher, to try to figure out, everything that's in your toolbox that you may have kind of assumed as a one size fits all. You have to rethink. So, for example, when you teach adult learners, you really have to reimagine a lot of these things. They're going to be better at certain things and not as quickly sponge-like on other things. Mm-hmm. But just anyway, there's a lot in what you said, and I like all of it. I like just even the fact that the Suzuki method tends to have the technique built into the repertoire. And when I went and studied with George Nykrug, I have to admit I was shocked when he just, at some point said, "Oh, we won't do etudes. The cello repertoire is too vast to bother with etudes. All the technique you need is in those pieces. Learn more of the pieces." But then there are other students like what you described yourself, where that structure of being able to just kind of take those scales, and now we're adding this component, and now we're adding this component, so that they can really see the structure in the technique and break things down themselves. That's kind of another one of those situations where if you're not reading the student in front of you, you're going to try something that is either going to turn them off a little bit, because it's just they have to more proactively make themselves do something that's not exactly what was in their goals in front of them. Mm-hmm. And that's a good point. So what do you think about the Suzuki conference and the ASTA, American String Teachers Association conference, being held jointly this coming March in Louisville?
I think it's fantastic. I think for a long time there have been two separate worlds, and maybe some different thinking and maybe some misunderstanding as to some of the technical aspects in a particular method or a particular way of teaching. And I really like that this bridge is being built between the two organizations, because there's a lot of common elements to it. And I think the Suzuki method has evolved over time since the 90s and early 2000s, and a lot of the thinking around it is still based around how it was structured in the 90s and early 2000s, and all of the important elements and tenets are still there. But what we're all looking to do, I think, is to evolve with the current climate of teaching and student learning, because that has changed. Children learn differently now in schools, and I think it sort of behooves every organization to reach across the aisle, so to say, to kind of what's working for you these days. So I think it's great.
I think so too. I'm thrilled. And I mean, yeah, you talk some about the Suzuki side of things evolving. It's good to see ASTA evolve as well in terms of, I mean, I think this is long overdue too, in that ASTA, American String Teachers Association, has always been about the sharing of ideas, which is great. It's wonderful to go, whether at the conference or just through online discussions, and wait, you do that how? Wow, when I tried that, this happened. Well, did you do it this way? I mean, it only helps the profession as a whole to share these ideas. Why not also share with the wide and I mean, just really significant Suzuki field, that the sharing can only benefit both groups for sure. Well, neat. Let's see. So then, in talking about evolving and the things that have changed, that works as a good segue to another one of your interests is in kind of either breaking down the barriers between audience and performer or reimagining them. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an ensemble that I'm a part of called Other Minded, all one word, and it's based out of Chicago, and it's with some people that I met during my master's program at Roosevelt, and then a collection of other musicians from around the world, really. And we have I can talk about this a little bit more later, but we have a concert coming up that we have our singer from Denmark coming in, and it's turned into this really interesting collective of ideas about how we connect with our audience during performance, and how the history of performance has evolved. And for a long time, and still to this day, there's an idea that you go to the symphony, you get all dressed up, you go to the symphony, you go and you sit in the audience, and you're very, very quiet, and you clap at the correct time, and you never interact with the audience, with the performers on stage. They never interact with you, and then you clap, and then they leave, and you all go home, which fine. There's beautiful music that's being done with that, and I'm not saying that that should go away at all, because there's something incredible about it, and there's something fun about the pageantry of it as well. But there's a different way to do things too, and I feel like a lot of audience members, they want to interact with the musicians. They want to know more. They also want to express their gratitude and their excitement, and I think we as people, we want to share those feelings with each other. When we really like something and we're excited about it, we want to tell the people that we like it. And so that's what we're trying to do in Other Minded, is we're trying to bring the audience on stage, so to say, and get them involved, not only with giving them a place to share their ideas, but hearing their experiences as well. Because I mean, music is about sharing experiences and emotions and feelings, and the audience members have that too. And there's a lot of things that I will never experience as a white man. I don't have the experiences of being a woman in this country, of being a person of color in this country. And those are stories that audience members have, and we should share them. And I feel like it's a really great platform that we have to let people, number one, share in our music with us, but also share their experiences as well. So that's what sort of breaking the boundaries between audience and performer, what we're sort of aiming to do with this new music ensemble.
Nice. Yeah, it is funny to see how audiences respond to that removal of the wall, the invisible wall as well. And I mean, some of them are more self-conscious because they're aware that the other audience members see their reactions too. And like what you say, and it's never going to go away that we have situations where you get all dressed up and you're there in the dark part and the performers are in the light part. Some people really enjoy that ability to just immerse themselves and lose any self-consciousness. But in some ways, this day and age of we've had recordings available for so long, you can get that experience sitting in your living room just with your speakers, and you know what I mean? Just hearing and if you want to hear a recording of a live performance, okay, lose yourself in that way. But when you go knowing that it's going to be a situation where we're all a part of the art and the performance, it's funny how that changes everything. And the audience can even see how much their reactions are immediately picked up on by the musicians.
Absolutely. And I think, like, myself as an audience member, I don't know how much I would like to be a part of the art if I'm an audience member. I really enjoy the act of just going and sort of knowing what my role is as an audience member, and knowing that, okay, all I have to do is sit here, and I really like that. But it lets us do things a different way and gives people more options of what to do. The last performance that we did, we were performing, and there was also dinner that people were able to eat, and people were getting up, they were having small conversations with each other, they were, you know, having drinks, and it sort of turned the idea on its head that you're going to sit down, you're going to be quiet, and you're going to listen to what we have to play for you for an hour and a half or so. So it's fun.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Well, and let's see. So you're also very interested in contemporary music. So how did that come about? And then also along with that question, do you yourself either compose and arrange or help your own students explore composing their own works?
Yeah, so the interest in contemporary music didn't really happen until I was in Chicago at Roosevelt, and there's a really strong composition program there, and so the composers were always looking for musicians in the school to play their works, and I formed a really close connection with this composer Sean Ellis Hussey, and he was really interested in sort of physicality of the instrument because he didn't play cello, he didn't play violin or anything like that, and he was interested in what made us uncomfortable physically to play. What were the sort of limits of the instrument and limits of physically what we could do on it, and that was interesting and really uncomfortable because I had spent a really long time sort of drilling into my head, this is how you play the cello, this is proper technique, this is good, this is again, I talked about like idealized sound or idealized technique earlier, and this sort of turned it on its head a little bit, and he sort of said, I kind of want you to forget about that. Like, I know this probably isn't going to be good technique, but this is sort of what I would like you to feel in your body. Like, I want you to feel tension here. And
Wow.
I think a lot of new music sometimes can get into like noise for noise sake almost. So I'm not saying that this is noise at all. I mean, there's always a concept behind that, but it can be a little bit hard to grapple with sometimes. But this is actually it's quite tonal, but it is very physical, and it does explore the limits of the instruments, and that's sort of how I got involved with the contemporary music. And along with that was a really strong improvisation element. A lot of our music is very improvisatory, and that was something that I really was uncomfortable with before meeting Sean. Was I really wanted the notes that I were supposed to play on the page in front of me or memorized, and I spent a really long time memorizing those pieces, and I was proud of it that I had those notes. And then to sort of say, well, actually, you're here. We have an idea. We have a concept. What does healing through music look like, or what does that sound like? Play, basically, and that's scary. But over time, it becomes more comfortable, and it's a fun complement, I think, to me still. You know, in all of my practice sessions, I'm still thinking, good technique. This is how I play the cello, but then there's a different way to do it as well. And the improvisation element is a lot of fun with it. But arranging, I don't do so much composition myself, but I do a lot of arranging. And during the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we saw a lot of community members who were hurting, and I was racked with trying to think, like, what can I do with this? And with several colleagues from the conservatory, I arranged the Ukrainian national anthem for voices and instruments, and we recorded it with so many students across the conservatory. And the goal was to raise money that would go toward the Ukrainian community in Milwaukee, and then, you know, go overseas to help Ukraine. And it felt like I was able to use my voice in that way, and use my instrument for something that meant a lot to a community that really needed support at that time. So I'd been arranging before that, but that was when I really stepped into arranging for something that I felt really passionate about.
Excellent. Outstanding. Yeah, it is, whether in composing or arranging, to really know when to make an instrument sound as idiomatic as possible and when to make it sound uncomfortable. That's an interesting idea. Like that Stravinsky starting out the bassoon on, what is it, that C5, here, so start your solo. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah. Well, and I just want to go back to then you mentioned arranging and then having this piece recorded for the Ukrainian community in Milwaukee. Just anyway, something jogged an idea of how I want to make sure, letting you know that the several of my students who play in Lake Geneva Symphony, where you're principal cellist, give kudos to you for your leadership in that orchestra. I think there's something also in just being as solid and comfortable with your technique to be a good leader and just kind of naturally do not only cues, but demonstrate when you're about to do a type of bowing, and you don't have to turn around and tell everybody, hey, we're going to do that this way. You just make sure and model a little bit bigger, and then you hear them doing it like you're going to do it. Just want to make sure and throw that in there. And kind of along the same sort of lines, the idea of this column from Milwaukee to Chicago, which is not that far, really. There are a lot of musicians that are in Chicago and play in Milwaukee and vice versa. But it also seems, to a certain extent, like the ones who stay based in Chicago, they'll go and play some gigs over in Indiana or in the Quad Cities in Iowa or further down in Illinois. Whereas when you're based in Milwaukee, you can even play the things up in Door County, or they're just the feasibility of certain performance schedule works better based in one place or in the other. So what are some of the other things that you have going on in 2023? Upcoming performances or projects? What are you up to in the near future?
So with my new music ensemble, Other Minded, we have a performance on May 7th coming up in Chicago, Constellation, Chicago. And then after that, we were one of the recipients of a grant from the Wisconsin Conservatory and the Innovation Fund. And it was to bring our improvisation curriculum to the Suzuki classes at the Wisconsin Conservatory. So that's going to be happening in September. I think September 23rd is where we're going to be going to the conservatory and doing an improvisation masterclass for the Suzuki students and teaching students how they can use their knowledge in Twinkle and other Suzuki pieces to start improvising. So we're really, really excited about that. And with the Lake Geneva Symphony, we have our last season performance on May 20th, and we're performing some fantastic works: the Hansen Symphony No. 2, the Borodin Polvetsin dances, and a Schumann concert piece for horns and orchestra. So it's going to be really fun. So that's what I have going on for the rest of the season and into the fall.
That sounds like a lot of fun, and best of luck with it. Best of luck with the teaching and the performing, and hopefully maybe see more opportunities for ASTA and Suzuki to kind of cross-pollinate.
Yeah, like you said, I think only good can come from it. But thank you so much for having me.
All right, well, terrific. And everybody out there, happy practicing all weekend and during the week. And we'll see you this time next Friday. Take care.